Very good afternoon, everyone, to yet another uLaw webinar. Thank you very much for participating and promoting and joining us during these webinar series that we conduct every Friday. Today's session is not accredited for CPD. I want to make sure that you appreciate and understand that right from the get-go. But it is going to be talking about one of the most powerful features we feel in uLaw, besides the accounting. I think we've spoken in our webinar series over the last few weeks. We've spoken about the accounting aspects, business reporting, compliance. But then what we're going to be touching upon today are time-saving features, including court form filling, as well as other business letters and forms that we try and automate the filling for you that can save you time and money. And so though in the overall spread it talks about forms automation, we're going to be highlighting the court forms automation, right from your small claims to criminal law, and we're continuing to add to those different court forms. And these are the forms that you would find available online, and we ensure that we keep up to the latest forms. We generally take about 4 weeks from the time it's been released on the website when it's available in uLaw, but we consistently stay current and ensure that we're current. And the second half of the demonstration today, we're going to be talking about, just as a normal part of your process, using uLaw as a legal professional, what opportunities do you have to automate many of the letters and forms and documents that you generate through your life. Okay? So moving along, having an agenda, as we always do. Court forms automation, as I said, we write from small claims, landlord and tenant, POA or HTA, family law, accident benefits, criminal, and we've recently included WSIB as well. So for these areas of practice, we allow you, using uLaw, to pre-fill or automate the court form filling as much as information as we can get from you in that matter. As you give us more information about the matter, and we're going to talk about it today as to how we associate additional parties within a matter and how that's very important for these court forms automation and for other letters that we're going to be generating. And then we're going to be focusing on automation when it comes to documents and letters that you generate. Client ID verification, conflict screening. These are important documents and reports. I would say mostly documents that the Law Society would like to know in terms of a conflict screening report. They want to make sure that you are able to articulate why you felt that particular client there was no conflict, or if you did know about it, how did you handle it? So it's kind of a form, a letter, however you like to call it, but we automate the filling of that information. Retainer letters based on your settings, based on your rates, based on the information you provided us with the uLaw. We try and provide best practices, templates, and pre-filled documents for automation of those generations. And the list goes on. Non-engagement, even authorization letters, letterheads, and you are able to obviously bring in your own recipe for success letters and forms, and we're happy to bring that into uLaw and templatize it. Okay? So primarily today's conversation and today's discussion during this webinar is going to be focused on the automation component of both the court forms as well as the documents and letters that you generate within uLaw. And I kindly request you to use our chat line to ask any questions that you may have. I do have my support staff who would be happy to answer either at the end of the session or if the questions have to be answered right away, let us know, and we're happy to do it as we demonstrate the product. Okay? So as always, I'm going to be switching gears between this presentation to set the agenda and going into my uLaw. And there you have it. So I'm logged into our Playground account as a fixtures legal professional or lawyer, in this case, Mr. Roger Moore. I'm presented with my dashboard. Sure, I'm going to try and increase the volume hopefully that's better. Let me try this. All right, so today's topic and then what we're going to be covering is around the court forms automation and business forms automation. So to make this seamless, to make the whole webinar easy to navigate, what I've tried to do prior is create some sample matters. So as you can see, within my recently modified contacts or even within the most recently modified matters, I have created a fictitious character, Jonathan Form, as we're talking about forms. I've added him as a client. Obviously, I've created I've added some basic information. I've added his birth date, and I'll show you why. I've also added also known as a nickname, and I've done that for all my contacts that I've added to show you because there are certain spots within forms that ask you for that information. I've given Jonathan an address and marked it as a mailing address, and I've added the phone number and an email or website that he may have. Okay, so I've just created some basic information about this client, Jonathan, and obviously that's represented within my contacts. So it's really important for you to understand, for you to utilize the additional parties. Those parties reside within uLaw primarily as contacts. Okay, so you go create them, and then you can either group them. You can see Jonathan is grouped under my clients. And what I've done is I've taken the liberty for the purposes of this webinar to create as much as 7 different matters for Jonathan as an example. And as you can notice, these are different areas of practice. So I've started from small claims, family, a couple of landlord and tenant, criminal. The idea is to give you or paint the picture about the different types of areas of practice and the different types of court forms that we're able to pre-fill as much as we can, and how we associate the concept of additional parties. So within every matter within uLaw, we have our docketable matter events, our disbursements, where you can bring in your retainers. You can associate additional rates of different legal counsels or others involved in that matter. But importantly, and we've also spoken about documents. Documents is a way to integrate with Google Drive and store all your documents in one place, and then associate them so that it's available right within uLaw here. But then I don't think we've covered as much about this new tab, or a relatively newer tab, called additional parties. Okay, so if you're going to notice, for a particular matter, I do not necessarily have an additional party, but let me start with the small claims. Okay, you see it's a different file number. It's 538936. And my additional parties, I could go ahead and add party to show you the various types of parties nomenclature we've used, and it's alphabetically aligned or sorted. So right from attention to adjusters, applicants, and it goes down to, for some of the accident benefits, we have the health practitioner, the insurance, even the police officer. As you can notice, the police officer, representative of the opponent. So if you're representing Jonathan and the defendant here in this case is Adam Brown, we've associated Adam's representative as Stefan Edberg. Okay, and that's how we've gone about doing that. If you ever wanted to change certain information about an already existing additional party, you can just say item and then choose what that is and go ahead with that. So the idea is you've created a client, you created a matter for that client, it gives you the file number, and you come into the additional parties and you associate contacts. Now, Adam Brown is a contact, Stefan Edberg is a contact, and so is Adam Sandler. So if you look at it, let me go back real quick and let me search for Adam Brown. And we have a search very similar to that of Google, where it's kind of sequential. As you type it in, we bring up the information. So if I were to choose Adam Brown, we have his information, 90 Queen Street, Brampton, and that's the information that gets used when associating Adam Brown to that court form. Okay? Simple 3 steps. Now, let's say you're going to generate, and obviously you're going to be docketing and you're going to be dispersing the client, but this webinar is going to be focusing on the forms, and let's say this is a small claims. Okay? And I have a few examples that I want to walk you through when it comes to small claims. So right under document generation, in that matter, under forms, these are all the list of court forms that we automate within uLaw. So right from small claims, landlord and tenant, POA, HTA, WSIB, SAABs, LAT even, accident benefits, family law, and criminal. So we're going to be generating a small claim form. And let me start with one of the most common forms that we know that our clients generate using uLaw, and that would be the plaintiff's claim. Now, uLaw is smart enough to understand when you do a plaintiff's claim that in this case, because you are representing Jonathan is the plaintiff. And because Adam is the defendant, it knows that to associate Jonathan as the plaintiff. You can tell it what courthouse you're going to. You just have to type in, the first few alphabets of the city or the address that you know, and we bring the list of all the courthouses. Click on it, date it, and hit the download button. Now, different forms, court forms especially, come in different formats. So they come in PDFs, Word documents, and the small claims comes in Word documents. So here is that form that I'm going to be opening in Word. And as you notice, so we used the Ottawa Courthouse. And if there is a claim number within the matter, and let's quickly check that, there's a court file number, and that's the SC12123, and that's the court form number or claim number. The address of the courthouse is pre-filled. Now let's look at what we've been able to pre-fill so far within this plaintiff's claim. Jonathan form, obviously, is plaintiff number 1. His address, because it was already available within the contacts that you created within the contacts panel in uLaw. It also picked up JF, which is the AKA, or also known as, or nickname, as it was called within Jonathan's contact form. Has his address, and if he had a fax number, we'll bring that in too, right? So that's filled. What else is filled? Who is the representative? In this case, this would be yourself or the person using uLaw to generate this form. In this case, it's my fixtures lawyer, Roger Moore. Bring his LSUC number. And that's part of the settings where you can put that number in. His address. So that's available within your details under your settings. So under settings, you have your details. This is all of your information. 2123 Main Street. That's the information that's repurposed. So with the court form feature within uLaw, and this is a time saver. It's not rocket science. I mean, even rocket science is not rocket science today, but this is a really nice time saver where you don't have to necessarily handwrite or type in this information. And mind you, this document is an editable document. So if I have to type in her second name, I can go ahead and type that in. Now let's look at the next set of information we're capturing, the defendant. So as you know, within the additional parties, let's go back to that matter. Within the additional parties, for this particular small claims matter for Jonathan, we had Adam Brown as the defendant. So we clicked on Add Party. We chose defendant. And then you are able to choose which contact you want to associate. So you can just basically So uLaw has a quick search. You can bring that in and then hit save. And that's how you add those parties. And I've added Adam Brown as the defendant. I've added Stefan Edberg as the representative of the opponent. And I've actually added a second defendant, and I'll show you how we handle that. So in this particular 7A form, we have defendant number 1, that's Adam Brown, his address, phone number, and then we also have the representative, Stefan Edberg. And now, if I, let's say, generate small claims, and did an additional party, that should bring Adam Sandler's information. Okay, so a very simple, less than kind of 3-4 minutes, created a contact Jonathan form, created a matter, and we were able to start adding parties, saving them as contacts prior. That's the only prerequisite to additional parties, is you have those information stored within our contacts menu. Okay. Now, let us look at maybe a WSIB. Okay, so I have an example where it's a wrongful dismissal, and maybe there's an intent to object or request for a copy that I can generate. I hit document generation, WSIB, say intent to object, download. And you can see in that additional parties, Form 1A, we have Adam Sandler's information for the previous example. Now let me open up the WSIB form. So as you can see, it's kind of pretty much the same that you would find online. You have the claim identifiers, Mr. Jonathan form, the claim number, his address, the representation, and this is an editable PDF. Let's kind of handle that because you're generating that form. Or you can switch because this is an editable PDF as well. So our goal is to save you time from filling these forms by auto-filling it based on the information you can easily associate with the uLaw. And that is pretty much the same concept when it comes to all forms. Now let's move on to maybe a HTA example or a POA example. And in this case, let's look at maybe an appeal. And what more interestingly enough, before I jump into the POA, let me just look at the LATB. Because there are certain components of the association that I want to talk about. So let's just assume there's a landlord and tenant case. Obviously, Jonathan is involved in too many matters. Now, if I have, in this case, it's a rent eviction. But if you look at it, the landlord is Emma Brown, and the representation of the opponent is Stefan Edberg. So let's say Jonathan is the tenant in this case, right? And basically, Emma is the landlord. So you're basically representing the tenant. You'd go into our LATB and basically do a tenant application for refund. And you could have changed that. I mean, if you wanted to just change that, and let's say the situation is where Jonathan is the landlord and Emma is the tenant, it's just a simple reversal. So here is one of the examples where our friend Jonathan is the tenant. And you can notice this is a slightly different form. It has his information, email, again, editable PDF. But let's say we want to switch roles, and let's assume that Jonathan is the landlord and Emma is the tenant. All I have to do switch Emma to be the tenant, unlock it, and save it. And maybe you being the landlord, and this is a case where you want to evict the tenant, because now you're on the landlord side, you now generate the L1 forms. And when you generate these forms, maybe you're going to notice the same information is now repurposed and associated as it's relevant to that form. Okay? So you're going to have the landlord's information as Jonathan Form, his address. You're going to have the tenant as Emma Brown, because that's how she's associated. And obviously you would fill, this is your information, your phone number, your email, etc. So from the start of this webinar, we've looked at, again, just a quick recap for those who just joined us a bit late. Created the contact, Mr. Jonathan Form, created a matter, created contacts for the parties that we want to associate with this matter. And we've looked at a small claims matter. We've looked at a landlord and tenant and a WSIB. And I could do a quick family matter where it's a divorce, and I've preset these additional parties where Emma Brown is a respondent, Stefan again is her representative, and for Hudson Brown, could be another member of the family, you're representing Hudson as well. So if I were to now look at a family law form, again under document generation, forms, family, and let me do an application for divorce. Type in the courthouse information as we bring in the court file number right into here, and let me download that family form. And the idea behind bringing all these different areas of practice is, as you as legal professional may want to focus not just specifically on one area of practice, you may have multiple areas of practice. If you're a paralegal, you may be doing small claims, landlord and tenant, and POA. So there's various areas. If you're a lawyer, you may be doing family law, maybe criminal. We are in the process of looking at the top 20 forms that are used both in real estate and in immigration. So that's kind of our next roadmap of forms to bring in, because both these areas of practice have, I would say, a plethora of forms, thousands of forms. So we're doing a survey with our clients and with our prospective clients to understand, and also talk to legal professionals to understand the top 25 to 30 forms that would make most sense for them, best bang for their buck, and we're going to bring that in as well. So here is a divorce application. Again, you can notice that this is now a Word document, unlike a PDF. So those are the two different formats that you would find a court form. You have the address pre-filled, and again, you have the applicant's information, your information here as the lawyer. You have the respondent as well as the second respondent and the individual representatives for those respondents. Okay, and yet another feature in the roadmap is the ability for us to also do simple calculations. So that's one thing that's missing at this time. Obviously, you would have to pre-fill the information. But as part of our roadmap, that's kind of our next big thing, is to be able to do simple calculations to give you the numbers that you need. And I mentioned to you early on in the webinar, we spoke about the date of birth. So if you looked at Jonathan's contact information, so here's Mr. Jonathan Form. If I were to edit his information and looked at what I've stored, I did enter his birth date. So he was born 1976, and that's how we've kind of calculated. Oh, there you go, his age. So we've kind of used that, his birth date, to calculate his age, and we've done that for all other applicants. Okay. So moving along, let me cancel out, discard changes if you really don't intend to make any changes to that screen. And a criminal matter, maybe, where in this case the applicant is the Crown Attorney of Canada, and you're representing the respondent. And now let's look at a criminal form. It'd be Form 1. Hit criminal. So you say criminal rules of the Ontario Court of Justice. I could have done maybe Form 7. I could do these quickly in a very parallel way. So as Form 1 is getting released, I could do a Form 7. And kind of that's the power of the parallel processing that uLaw provides. So again, Jonathan form, basic information, Crown Attorney of Canada, your information, your address, all pre-filled. And this is the criminal forms as it is available online. Okay. So as you can see under document generation, we do right from small claims, landlord and tenant, POA, HDA, accident benefits, tribunal, accident benefits, ABS, family law, as well as criminal. And we've kind of looked at maybe 5 or 6 examples. Everything else would kind of follow suit in a very similar way. So this is one aspect of court forms automation within uLaw, which is a special feature for the product. Now we're going to be looking at the next aspect for the next 20 minutes or so, where we're going to be talking about what are the general documents that are business related day to day that you should be generating or you are required to generate, and how easy do we make it for you to do that. And we could consider same example of Jonathan form. So now let's say there was a client intake. Jonathan showed up at your office, right? A quick rewind, and he wanted you to represent him, obviously, in all these different matters. You created a matter for him. So you create, obviously it's a fresh slate when you start off, but then you provide a quick title, an area of practice to which you want to associate it, maybe a court file number if there already was, pre-fills all of your information. And let's say you've created that file number. We have quite a few documents that you can generate right away, and we pre-filled these documents in letters so that, again, you don't have to handwrite them, and it's available to you right away at a click of a button. So a simple client ID verification. This is a Law Society document that asks you, all right, what information did you capture from the client to verify his identity? Mostly it's a driver's license, maybe a passport, and you can scan that in and bring it into uLaw and associate it into our documents. Okay, you can bring all of that information right here and just drag and drop it into the Google Drive association. As I just quickly close this out, here is my verification document. Has all the information pre-stored, right? You didn't have to handwrite this. You could obviously, like all other documents in uLaw, you can modify the content, phone number. Maybe at the time when you did it, you didn't have his business address. Maybe he gave it to you later. You can put that in here. Let's say you took his driver's license. And you would file this. So there's a good question from our client, which talks about how do we associate these documents into Google Drive. We did cover that in our previous webinar, but I'll be really happy to show you right away in this context. So what happens is, within our settings, within our matter, this is really a starting point, we ask you, where would you like your matter documents to be stored? By default, this would be to none. You would just come into your own uLaw account and make that to Google Drive and hit save. Okay. By end of the year, we've done the integration with Dropbox and Box, and we should have that available to you early in the new year. So then you have two options. I think Dropbox is first, followed by Box. Okay, so once you've done that, and once you've created a file number, when you hit the Documents tab, we then associate uLaw, or try to associate uLaw with your Gmail account. So Google Drive comes with every Gmail account. I'm going to quickly log into my corporate Gmail. And every Gmail account comes with its own copy of Google Drive that gives you 15 gigabytes of data. It's right under here. And what uLaw does when you make that association and when you see this, no documents found, it creates a couple of folders right within your My Drive or Google Drive. It creates a folder called ulawpractice, and it creates another folder under that called Matter. And for the unique file number, again, in uLaw, every file number is unique because that's what represents a matter. For that, each file number, JF763870, it creates its corresponding folder within Google Drive. And let us say you generate a form. So let's look at this client ID verification. When you're looking to save it, you can go to Google Drive, ulawpractice, Matter, under that particular folder, client ID verification, save. Okay. Let's generate another form where I can show you a bit of a drag and drop. Conflict screening report. Okay, it's a Law Society report that asks you why you determined Jonathan was not a conflict, or if he was, what steps or actions did you take? So here's your conflict screening report. As you can see, it brings your information, today's date, your information again, the client's information. It also brings the matter you've created for him, the file number, and let's say you say it's a new client, checked uLaw, and no conflicts. And you'd say, yep, no conflict. No, did not refer him to someone else. Did not decline retainer, or whatever the situation may be. And you can print this, sign this, or you can electronically sign it if you have DocuSign or something like that. We support electronic signatures, as this is just a PDF. And let me show you how you could probably drag and drop this. So let's say this is the PDF that we generated. Drag and drop that right into your Google Drive. So it's really you dropping it into Google Drive. And then when you come back and you hit refresh within uLaw, within that matter, you're going to notice right away those two different documents that you actually physically stored or digitally physically stored within Google Drive, because of its relationship with the file number is directly associated right under here. Okay? So I hope that answers that question, and that's how you go about creating these documents, auto-filling them, and you can bring in all your court forms too. Right? Generate those court forms and then start saving them. Driver's license, retainer copies, receipts, all of that under one file, making it easy for you to know what's been generated for that file at any time. Moving along with the context of this webinar, we've done the client ID verification, a very important document. We've done the conflict screening. And when it comes to retainer letters, right, there's no single silver bullet. Everyone brings their own set of nuances into these letters because it's very personal, it's to their business. But what we try to do is come up with a templatization, lack of a better term. These are templates, best practices from the industry. So if you look at our retainer letters, we have simple, elaborate, and flat rate. And we also provide you the option to generate them in both PDF and MS Word. And the advantage of obviously generating in MS Word is that you can tweak it and you can customize it. And the automation that we're talking about today is being able to associate a lot of information that we already know about yourself, about that matter, into that document. So we know that's a retainer letter for this criminal matter. We put the file number in. We know this is your information, so this is pre-populated. Today's date, no big there, no big thing there. And so Jonathan Form's information, file name, file number, and the court number if it existed. And you are obviously able to modify this information if you choose to, and have generated in a Word document. And if you are collecting a retainer letter, this is where you would say what that is. And we have many more samples. So right under retainer letter, we have simple, elaborate, flat rate. Under letters, and this is another new arena for uLaw, we're trying to add as many documents as you can automate within this section. But real quickly, we have an additional 5 examples of retainer samples. So you could do specifically an hourly. You can even choose whether your client's male, female, party, corporation, and it kind of words it accordingly. You can put in your disbursement fees, your penalties, non-engagement fees, and it would obviously take your billable hours from your settings because it knows you charge $150 or $200, whatever it may be, and it associates all of that from that. Again, can be generated as MS Word. Going back to the letters, we even have a really good sample for contingency. Same concept, but this has now wordings that are more fine-tuned towards a contingency matter. It also brings in your any interest that you may want to charge. It brings in your fees. So the $150 per hour plus disbursements, whatever you may charge, all these are automated or brought in or merged into this document based on the information we know. Okay, so here's a good example. You would obviously sign this, print this, sign this, scan, bring it back. Moving along, let's say for some reason, there's an authorization letter. So let me show you quickly, again, pre-filled authorization letter with very minimal things that you need to put in. I, the undersigned, hereby authorize the lawyer to speak and act on my behalf, and here's the client's information right at the bottom. Non-engagement letters, so if Jonathan were to non-engage you at any time, here's a pre-filled template that you can right away use. Okay? Now let me jump into the letters section. So we spoke about other means of business documents and forms that you probably generate for your clients and your business. So under the document generation, for that matter, under letters, we have a quick and easy way to generate a business letter. You may want to create a master letterhead. These are just click and choose. And that's what a business letterhead looks like. And then obviously you could change that. Kind of gives you a starting point, if you will. And then you can kind of add to that. A client intake form. So here's a simple and easy way for you to, in addition to the documents that we generated before, if you wanted to be a little bit more thorough, you could actually ask this. One of the things we're also bringing as part of our roadmap is pre-filling this client intake form. Some of our clients have their own websites and actually have a client intake form right in their website. One of the roadmap features for uLaw is as your client fills the information in that client intake to auto-populate this as well. So that's the power of being able to automate a whole workflow using uLaw. So here has the information of Jonathan's form. Imagine if Jonathan were to pre-fill this on your website and that available to you right away. Will be available to you here and will also be available to you under contacts as a new client intake and will be notified to you via email. So that's how we plan on doing that. And we spoke about the hourly contingency. There's also some additional samples for POA, HTA, specific examples of wordings around that. Importantly enough, we have disposition letters. And before that, interestingly, I could even print labels. So I could print a 3.5 by 1.25 inch label where I can add my work address, include my phone, maybe email, and just hit download. You can say how many rows and how many, and we basically just print this. So here's to Mr. Jonathan form for that particular matter, his address, his information, all of that. And this is the Avery label. So that's the format that we've used. So if you're buying Avery labels, this is the format that we used. Okay. Little subtle things that can make you productive and save you time. So right under letters, print labels. So let's look at, don't want to run through everything, but let's look at other. So you have the master letterhead, client ID individual letters, non-engagement, disposition, file or matter closing, right? So let's say you're closing out a matter, or even a fax cover sheet. For almost every possible, or most of the possible workflows, there's a document within uLaw with a lot of the information pre-filled. So under document generation, I could do a disposition letter. And a power of attorney for personal care. I mean, it's important that, depending on the areas of practice that you focus on, this, again, could be another document that you need your client's approval or signature. And let me open up. I think we've got that. So here's the power of attorney for personal care. Again, pre-fill of information, your information attested by. So the idea behind that is we save as much as time as we can in any documents or forms that you have to handwrite or pre-fill. Okay. Now the additional parties, I've just had another question. The additional parties are also used for documents and for business rules that you may apply. So let's say in this criminal matter, I'm going to just assume it's not logical, but just an assumption that there's a joint retainer. So we have an additional party by the name joint retainer. And let's say it's Emma Brown. And now when I generate, let's say, a retainer letter, you're going to notice the idea behind that is to be able to associate Jonathan Form and Emma Brown as joint retainers for that particular matter. Okay, so the additional parties become very important from a court forms automation perspective, but also from other areas of business practice. If you were to generate a receipt, it's very similar. It's going to be the name of Jonathan and Emma, or whatever the situation may be. And so we have various other types of additional parties. We even have an invoice too. So if the invoice needs to be in someone else's name, you can add that party, and when you raise an invoice for the work you've done, that invoice gets sent to that individual, and maybe Jonathan is a minor, and maybe he doesn't get the invoice, it's someone else. So we've tried to use the additional parties to really, for you to tell us for whom those documents need to be and what information do we need to pre-fill for those parties that you're associating within that matter. think that's one of the longest English statements I've ever made. Okay, so just a general recap, as we're starting to get a lot of questions already, but just as a general recap, when we spoke about our court forms automation feature or our business documentation and letters automation feature, we've primarily focused on how you would bring in additional parties by saving them as contacts to begin with, create a new client, create a new matter, and then bring in those additional parties, associate those contacts. And under document generation forms, we looked at various different examples from small claims to criminal and how uLaw can pre-populate. In some forms, we do as much as 95 to 100%. In some forms, obviously, it's lesser. As I said, as our roadmap, we're looking to obviously bring in calculations for, let's say, a family law. But at this time, most of the repetitive information that you hand fill, which many of our clients do and have to do on a daily basis, that time, that precious time is saved by you just generating those forms right out of uLaw. So we looked at those different court forms, different formats, and also ensuring it's the current format. And then we looked at various letters that you would have to generate as part of your business, as part of a legal professional, for your client, starting with the client ID verification, conflict screening, and we looked at how we could quickly, as you generate these documents, drag and drop them into the appropriate folder within Google to be associated with uLaw. There you go. We bring in all those different documents. And interestingly enough, you can actually open those documents right from here. So if it's a PDF document, you can open it right from within uLaw. So it's just not a context. You can actually open it too. Okay, and then we looked at conflict screening reports, retainer letters, authorization, non-engagement, and under letters we had these different letters. Again, one of our favorite, most widely used is the disposition letter. That a lot of our clients use the template that comes out of uLaw. It's kind of really simple and makes it easier for you to complete. And for further information, you would click on Other. And even a credit card authorization. So let's say you want to put your client's credit card on file. You probably have to get them to sign off on this particular form, right? A credit card authorization form. So basically it just fills in your client's information, his address, a file number, what type of credit card is on file, what is the name, card number, expiry date, right? And then you have your client sign it. So a lot of forms, a lot of letters, a lot of automation is what we've tried to continue building on. Again, it's not the next best thing after sliced bread, but slowly but surely we're getting there, and we're improving the automation process. As I said, the client intake is going to be a huge step forward and how we associate that. If you have a website, in the very near future, we're going to be able to associate that with that client intake from your website directly into uLaw and let you know that you've got a new client. Simple things as labels, memo templates, letterheads, fax cover sheets. And with that, I would probably bring this webinar to a close and open the chat window for any questions that our audience may have. Again, reiterating that today's conference, the webinar rather, is not accredited for CPD. We do have a CPD session coming towards the end of the month, and that is going to be accredited for CPD hours of 1.5. It truly will be your kind of last chance almost to get your CPD for the year, and it's going to be on everything practice management for 1.5 hours. For more information about the webinars that we run every Friday, please visit our website at ulawpractice.com/webinar. And if you're new to uLaw, we are a Canadian legal accounting and practice management software, and we would love for you to take our 30-day free trial, which you would find at ulawpractice.com. You would see this flashy button for a trial. So I'm going to open now the chat window because we have another 5 to 7 minutes before we can wrap this webinar up for any questions that our clients may have. A quick question is about the different types of court forms that we automate. A big part of what we covered today. I'm happy to reiterate real quick. So under document generation, under forms, these are the different areas of practice for which we automate court form filling. Starting with small claims, landlord and tenant, HTA, WSIB, up to criminal. As you can see, tribunal, accident benefits, family, and criminal. So these are the different areas. And if you look at the family law, it's both the Ontario Court of Justice, Superior Court of Justice, and the different forms, right from change in representation right up to consents. Hope that answered that question. Okay, another question. Disposition letters, and okay, so I think I covered this as well, but I'm just going to reiterate where you would find that. Sorry if I was a bit too fast in that. Under a particular matter, when you hit document generation, a lot of the letters that we have are under the letters tag. And if you look at the disposition, you would find it right here. And the non-engagement letter is right above letters. So what we did was kind of the most common documents. We didn't want to subgroup it. We just put it under the top 3 letters, if you will. Retainer letters. Okay, there's another question about the retainer letter templates. So these are templates that our clients have provided us. Simple, elaborate, flat rate. If there's a certain template that you have, we're happy to help you bring that and templatize it again with the uLaw. So you have your simple, elaborate, flat rate, which you can generate in PDF and Word, but you have furthermore retainer samples, hourly, use contingency letters, and then for retainer samples, furthermore, we have a HTA sample. You can generate in MS Word. And these documents, again, you can print them, sign them, and then file them right within uLaw. So it brings in a lot of the information that's already existing within that matter, within uLaw, so that we try and pre-fill as much as information as we can. Okay, if there aren't any more questions, thank you very much for attending the uLaw webinar. We look forward to seeing you on our next webinar next Friday, and have a great weekend.